Senate Regulated Industries Committee meeting to order. Looks like a healthy crowd this morning. Glad to have you all here. We have three bills. We're going to hear House Bill 476, Representative Washburn first. Then we'll move to House Bill 972. There is a substitute that's been presented after relatively extensive meetings between the parties and the governor's office to satisfy GORC requirements on that. So we will hear it and be willing to take action if desired on either of these bills. Then we have a hearing only on HB 1424, Representative Powell's bill on the COAM industry. So I will start with you, Representative Washburn, if you'll walk us through House Bill 476.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for hearing the bill. Members of the committee, I'm here to present House Bill 476, which proposes to move the engineers and land surveyors from under the jurisdiction of the Professional Licensing Board Division of the Secretary of State's office. This bill would allow the engineers and land surveyors to govern themselves, to have their own staff and budget. It is similar to the arrangement enjoyed by the real estate practitioners, the accountants, dentists, pharmacists, and other people. This is the way it is done in all the other southern states. This is a win-win-win bill. It is good for the engineers and land surveyors, it is good for the consumers of Georgia, and it does not hurt the state financially or otherwise. And this bill was passed out of your committee last year, and before we got to rules, there were some concerns from the governor's office. Those have since been addressed, and we have a green light from the governor, and so I ask your favorable consideration on this bill, and I'd certainly be glad to answer any questions.
All right. Well, let's walk through those objections from the governor's office. What were their problems with your bill?
I think they wanted it to be reviewed by GORC, which it was, and those findings, we did not agree with all of those, and we dealt with those and answered those. And since then, the governor is happy with the bill and has given us a green light. Do you want some details on the objections?
Well, I do, because I have been notified by the Secretary of State's office that it did not receive GORC approval and that they do not approve of this bill or desire to set up your separate board, that it's much more expensive in neighboring states when they have separate boards like this with separate staffs, et cetera, and they think it's that they're better equipped to handle this licensing than the scheme in your, I don't mean that as a negative scheme, but the setup in your bill. And so that was interesting that you were able to reach some type of accommodation without changing the bill with the governor's office, even though it did go through GORC now, and GORC rejected it or recommended against the bill. So you better help us with that and tell us exactly what the GORC council's concerns were and how they are addressed.
Well, Mr. Chairman, in broad strokes, I disagree deeply with GORC's findings on this. We have a number of complaints and have over the years from the engineers about slow service and about delays in administration by the Secretary of State's office. And we found that their findings, we did disagree with them. Now, Michael Sullivan is here with us, and we can certainly direct some other questions to him. Basically, I find it ridiculous for them to say that they can do a better job than these professional engineers and land surveyors can do governing themselves. I've been a real estate practitioner for 46 years. We govern ourselves very well, and I just find their objections to be absurd, truthfully.
Okay.
With all due respect to GORC.
All right. Well, I'm not GORC.
I agree.
I would hate it if you were disrespectful for them. It might be a different room to have that conversation. Are there questions from other committee members? Representative.
I just got
All right, Senator Mullis.
I agree. I agree completely with the Mr. Washburn. So that's all.
All right.
With his comments, yeah.
Got a question from Senator Brass.
Do we have anybody from GORC here today?
We do not. We
'Cause
got
we've-
Michael Sullivan, Emily Yona, and Russ Pennington scheduled to speak.
Because we've had all these bills about dealing with GORC, and yet they fail to show up. And and give any testimony. We don't know how to put a bill. Do you put the bill forward first, or do you send it to Gort first? We don't know. That there's no process. That's not in the law. And I couldn't even tell you the first person on Gort. And I also believe in the separation of powers and don't believe that the Secretary of State needs to be weighing in on our legislation.
Thank you,
All
Senator.
right, then is there a question in there, or you just feel better now that's off your chest?
Is it not true?
Very good. Senator Kennedy.
Following Senator Brass's lead of not asking questions, I just want to offer a comment too, and that is I know Representative Washburn's work ethic and integrity on approaching issues, and I find it very persuasive of what his opinion is on this, as well as our friends in the engineering sector that I assume we're going to hear from on all of this as well. And so, Representative Washburn, thank you for bringing the bill.
Thank you, sir.
Other questions? Senator Ginn?
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to let you know that I went to the Engineers Awards, where they gave out Engineer of the Year awards to a lot of great projects and things, but the only question I'm worried about is if you let the Sully speak, is he going to bring his joke book?
At least we have something in the form of a question. Yes, he may bring his joke book. Any other questions by members of the committee? All right, because we do have other people speak. Thank you, Representative. Appreciate you being here and your patience and waiting a whole year to be heard on it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Michael Sullivan.
No joke book this
Feel
morning.
free to
Mr.
use your
Mr.
joke
Chairman.
book. Lighten us up.
No joke book. But thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Michael Sullivan. I'm President and CEO of ACC Georgia. I'm here with Christy Taralla, who's our Director of Government Affairs. Representing the Surveying and Mapping Society of Georgia is Emily Yona. And we do have one of the members of the Professional Engineers and Land Surveyors Board, the immediate past chairman of that board, Russ Pennington, who's here this morning. And I just want to start by thanking Chairman Calvert for the open door policy that he has shown Christy and I over the session. It was probably a little annoying at times for what might have seemed like a fairly simple bill, particularly considering that this committee did recommend do pass unanimously on this bill last year, and it hasn't changed. In fact, I find that recommendation very persuasive. As compared to the recommendation of GORC. That seems to be a very persuasive recommendation. Also, the recommendation of the House Regulated Industries Committee, which recommended unanimously approval in the House by 163 votes to 2. This may seem like one of the committee members referred to it as a no-brainer, but this is a really important issue for our industry, a huge priority for the engineering and surveying industry, because it's a serious problem, and it's a big problem, and it's a problem that's been going on for several years now. And just to be candid, the problems have gotten a lot worse over the last several years. To the Secretary of State's point that what they refer to as economies of scale approach, it's exactly that economies of scale approach that's creating the problem. We've got an executive director and 3 assistants who are serving 6 licensure boards. I'm not good at math, but that's less than a person for each of the licensing boards that they're serving. 0.66 of a person, to be precise. The economies of scale are not working. In fact, they're creating serious problems that have gotten worse over the last several years. And I get calls and emails all the time asking for help with those problems. And it's everything from the typical, hey, I can't get anybody to answer my phone calls, I can't get anybody to tell me whether I can set for the exam, can't get anybody to tell me if I pass the exam, to really, really serious problems about violations of engineering ethics that represent a significant risk to the public health, safety, and welfare. In fact, the GORC report itself, its very first recommendation, and as Representative Washburn said, we agree with 3 of the 5 recommendations from the GORC report, but I find this one pretty significant. The State Board of Registration for Professional Engineers and Land Surveyors, as currently operated within the Office of the Secretary of State, presents a potential for harm. There are instances where delays of enforcement for engineering and surveying violations are a threat to public health and safety. That's powerful, and that's from the GORC report. The problem is that the Gork report decided to place a lot more concern on how the potential removal of our engineering and licensures and land surveyors surveying board might affect the Secretary of State's office, and less concern on that threat to public health, safety, and welfare. In fact, I think the Gork report is a perfect example. Y'all may not be familiar with this. I just learned about this law. Parnell's iron law of bureaucracy. In any bureaucratic organization, there are two kinds of people: those who are dedicated to furthering the actual goals of the organization, and those who are dedicated to preserving the organization itself. I would submit to you that the folks that were on the Gork Commission that were reviewing this legislation were more concerned about preserving the Professional Licensing Board Division of the Secretary of State's office than they were on protecting the health, safety, and welfare of Georgians, and specifically the significant issues that are affecting engineers and land surveyors. And this is an important piece of legislation, and it's more important now than ever. Engineering and land surveying firms are more busy than they have been in a long, long time, and y'all know we just passed a pretty significant infrastructure bill at the federal level that is going to exacerbate that problem. So at a time when we need more licensed engineers, we need more licensed surveyors, we don't need an impediment to licensing those engineers and surveyors. We need to clear that impediment out of the way and get more engineers and surveyors licensed so they can get to work, further their careers, and stamp plans. So I'd be happy to get into as much as you want to. I can go through jot and tittle of the Gork report, each of those recommendations. As the bill sponsor said, as Representative Washington said, we did agree with 3 of the 5 recommendations from the Gork report, and we have been working and communicating and meeting with the governor and folks in the governor's office about those 2 areas of disagreement, and have gotten the governor's office support on the bill. Again, I think the recommendation of this committee from last year is maybe perhaps more persuasive, or maybe should be more persuasive than the recommendations of that committee, and be happy to answer any questions that y'all might have.
I got you a couple just basics, because that was my recollection. At this point in the session, our brains are so crammed full of facts and figures and testimony and different bills, it's hard to recall what happened last year.
Yeah.
My recollection was we did pass your bill out of committee last year, but it didn't make it out of Rules Committee.
That's right. It passed unanimously out of this committee, and then when we got into rules, the governor's office, as y'all talked about on Tuesday in your committee, the governor feels very strongly that licensure bills should be reviewed by Gork, and we had not gone through the Gork process, and so at that point the hold was put on the bill. We did not pass out of rules. We went through the Gork review process in October, and continued to work with the governor's office after that, and then of course got the green light from them earlier this week that we were good to go to move forward. So we've dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's, and hope that we can once again earn the recommendation of this committee for this bill, which is a good bill that solves a serious problem.
Okay. So you were here for our Gork lesson on Tuesday, and we've all now reviewed the statute.
Yes.
And it's new to a bunch of us to really get into the details of it. So this is sounding really silly to me at this point, that we require Gork review. We're not required to follow their recommendations. We can apparently disregard them.
You can, in fact.
We got it 43-1A-8.
Yep.
After evaluating the report of the council and any other desired information based on the criteria in the Gork statute, the General Assembly, if we find it necessary to regulate a business or profession not previously regulated, we can do it.
That is correct.
So the governor's required you to get a Gork review. The Gork came back and said this is not appropriate, and then the governor said, well, we're okay with it.
That's right.
All right.
That's right. Yeah, 43-1A2 says any actions of the council pursuant to this chapter are solely recommendations and shall be non-binding, and 43-1A9 says nothing in the entirety of the Georgia Occupational Regulation Review Law shall be construed to limit the General Assembly's legislative authority under the Constitution. Right. It is merely a step that has to be gone through in certain circumstances, and we've gone through that step.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you going through the step, and I appreciate you working with the governor's office to, alleviate their concerns. And we're going to let other members have questions if they might. Senator Ginn, I think you might have It's
Mr.
your
Chairman,
pleasure.
I'd like to move due pass.
We're not there yet. We got two more speakers. I recognize you for a question for this speaker. Anybody else got a question for the speaker that doesn't end in, isn't it true?
Can I start with it? So you said they did pass you on 3 out of 5 findings.
Yes. The statute requires them to go into an analysis that has 5 different criteria, and of those 5 criteria, there are findings that there was a threat to public health and safety, that engineering and land surveying does require specialized skills and training, and they also conceded that there are examples in Georgia. Again, as Representative Washburn said, what we're asking for is nothing new. This legislation is literally based on the Georgia Real Estate Commission, which has been around since the 70s. They conceded that there are good examples of licensure being maintained and operated outside of the Professional Licensing Board division of the Secretary of State's office. The other 2 recommendations are where we disagreed. And they were, I could be less kind than Representative Washburn about those other 2 recommendations. But
Well, 3 out of 5 to me is, I mean, that's a D. That's a 60. D is for diploma, where I came from.
But again, we continue
Isn't
to work
it
on
true?
those. We continue to work on those afterwards, and yeah.
All right, thank you for sharing your testimony with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Emily Yona.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman and the committee. My name is Emily Yona, here representing the Surveying and Mapping Society of Georgia. I know based on Chairman Ginn's response, we just want to share our support for the bill. So,
Any questions for Ms. Yona? Thank you.
thanks.
Wow, that's nice, concise, brief testimony. Russ Pennington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm a 8-year member of the Pels Board and just rolled off as past chair. And I'll just say in my 8 years, we've had active conversations on that. So it's a big step to be back in front of you today. We are in absolute full support. And I think Sully hit on it well, that with all the infrastructure work that's come out with ARPA funds, as well as the infrastructure bill that's coming, this is really important for us to be able to regulate ourselves and not have shared staffing to support that. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
Any questions? All right, so you're having those, your experience as being chair of the board was
Yes,
that
sir.
you had, you didn't have the adequate responsiveness and service that you wanted out of the person wearing many hats apparently from the
Yes, sir.
Secretary of State's office.
And I will add that COVID has only exacerbated that issue. We are not allowed to have meetings in person per the Secretary of State's office. The staff is not meeting in person. We have 0 investigators to look at any complaints. It is an issue.
Is this going to cost the state of Georgia any additional money, or is it paid for by your guys' dues and whatever?
Yes, sir. It will be paid for entirely with our dues. We plan to leave our $50 fee with engineers and land surveyors that exists with the Secretary of State's office. In my 20-plus years in practicing, we have not had a single fee increase. And of the states that I'm licensed in, we are the lowest. My understanding is we're the lowest in the country. So we think we can do a cost of living adjustment to more than cover the revenue that was going to the Secretary of State's office, plus handle our staffing and our infrastructure needed for the board.
So by creating a new sort of level of bureaucracy, it's not government-paid bureaucracy, it's paid for by the industry itself.
Yes, sir. And understand we have to go through appropriations process for that, but we should generate new revenue for that.
Do you think your professions need to be licensed?
Absolutely.
How come? They got a bunch of crooks we got to reel in and regulate, or
Well,
what?
it's similar to when you all heard the structural engineering licensure in front of this committee a few years ago. I think we have unique continuing education and unique criteria to make sure that we have qualified individuals doing the work.
So just the fact that you got an engineering degree isn't enough assurance to the public that you know what you're doing?
And
I'm not being smart about it, I'm being serious.
no,
And it's,
absolutely. And frankly, it's those that I got an engineering degree, but I know every discipline of engineering. So I'm an environmental engineer, but maybe I'll go design some roadway projects or a bridge that you would never want to ride over again in your life.
Okay.
So,
Are there continuing education requirements to keep your license maintained?
yes, sir. 30 hours every other year. And reporting with that, and then we audit a portion of that to ensure folks are truthful about that.
All right. Any questions? Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry, we do have a question. Madam Leader?
I'm not sure who should answer it, but I did take a look at the executive summary of that report from Gort, and it stated that by moving the TELS from Secretary of State's office and make it an independent, that it would increase costs to the citizens. Is that a true statement?
It should not be. If the license fees were to remain at $50 per cycle, which is every other year, that if we move those, yes, that could be interpreted correctly. But with the anticipated increased fees, and I'll add Sully represents ACEC, Emily's here representative of SAMSOG. I think similar conversations have occurred with the structural engineering folks and the Georgia Society of Professional Engineer. I think everybody is in favor of increasing fees to support this move.
All right. Senator, again, I recognize you for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move do pass on HB 476 LC 364701S.
Jeff. 2 seconds by the Vice Chair and the
It'll take
Secretary.
a long time.
Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And any opposed? Note that as unanimous vote. Thank you. Good seeing you, Representative Washburn. Thanks for being with us today. All right, House Bill 972.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to present this
All right.
on behalf of Mr. Belton.
gonna
Mr.
let,
Belton had a little, Representative Belton had a grandchild born this morning, Mary Holland Perry. So he is not with us, so I'll be going over this real quick. But we heard this bill the other day, and there was, again, some issues, potential issues with Gort. But early on in the process, Representative Belton and others had reached out to OPB to see if Gort was even needed. And at that time, they said, OPB came back and said that that Gort review was not needed on this bill. As you heard Representative Belton say the other day, this bill has gone through, I think we were on at the time, the 26th sub of the bill. We are now on the 27th sub of the bill. But what we found out was through the process and through the various subs that came about, there was some slight changes in some regulations that could have kicked us into a GORC review. So through multiple meetings with the governor's office, we sat down, made a few changes back to where we're actually, we don't feel like we're actually changing we're not adding any new regulations. We're not taking any regulations away. We're simply updating the code in a lot of it. And the biggest probably question mark revolves around on changing the number of hours and the number of years required for that direct care once they get out of school. So that, I don't know, residency or whatever you want to call it. So what that was really the time you start school to the time you get your license, that total time is not changing. We're simply making some switches in between because your certified hours are what used to be 48 hours are now 60 hours. And so in order to keep that time frame the same, we're reducing the amount of work hours that they would perform in the field after those classes from 3 to 2. So again, the total time frame is not changing. We're simply just flip-flopping some things in between that. And so with that explanation and a few other changes, which I think Aubrey Villines could speak to,
All right. He's signed up to speak,
in the
so-
bill, the governor's office seemed to be good that we are actually not adding regulation or taking away regulation in a field that is already licensed. And so should this bill pass, we will have 1,700 of these licensed professionals ready to help with our, this constant battle we've got with mental health and various other issues. So,
All right. Any questions for Senator Brass by committee members? Okay, Aubrey Valines, if you'll please, I'd rather you take that podium so you can be on TV and we can hear you mic'd up.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, what I'd like to do, with your permission, is run through the changes with Gort.
That would be very helpful. Thank
And I
you.
want to thank Sean Marie for the 27th version, working so hard to get this ready for us. If you look at page 1, line 5 and 6, added the word certain, of no substantive change, but I just want to run through everything. If you look at page 12,
Real quick, Aubrey, we're going off of LC 365288S.
that's correct.
Just so the committee can follow.
So on page 1, added the word certain at line 5 and line 6. If you look at page 12, we put back in paragraph 9, which was line 292 to 296.
Put that back in, that had been removed at some point? Or?
Yes, it had, Mr. Chairman.
See, we hadn't seen these 26 different committee subs. We've seen one original that passed the House, and then in response to the governor's staff having Gork
Right, this is
concerns,
all in response to
this is
what the
all new.
governor.
So this is our first sub, and I want to thank Irene Munn and yourself for working with the governor as we requested and getting this to me in enough advance for us to look at it for this meeting.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
This is all in response to what the governor's recommendations were.
All righty.
So there'd be no problem. If you look at page 15, line 389 to 395, that was added back in, having to do with non-licensed people supervising. If you look at page,
We're not even with you right now. You still working off of 365288S?
yes, we are.
Page 15 doesn't have a line 389.
I'm sorry. Let me go back page 16.
All righty.
Auburn, the compare won't match up.
Pardon me?
If you're looking at the compare, it won't match up.
Okay. I'm working off the one they have in front of them.
All right, so on page 16, lines 389, is that added or deleted? What's different there?
That was added before we had deleted all that, and this puts it back in where a non-licensed person can be supervising people who want to get licensed. And again, Gort felt that any diminishment of the requirements or addition of the requirements put it in the purview of Gort, so we put it back in at the request of the governor.
Okay. So this has not been submitted for GORC review, and that's what you're trying to do is
That's what we're trying
keep
to
it from
avoid.
triggering that. All
Yes, we're taking out everything or putting everything in that would trigger the Gort review.
right. Okay.
If you look at page 19, we added back in 456 through 458. And I thought it was a good suggestion by the governor's office. They're saying that you've now requiring doctoral students or graduates to have 2 years of supervision, which was not our intent. So we put it back in that if you had a doctoral degree, you did not have to do that. So again, doesn't trigger GORC.
But you still need 1 year of supervision with a doctoral degree.
I think there's one other change, if I can find it. We added back in the universities, and I'm looking for that page on that. Give me 1 second, I'll be able to find it. If you look at page 15, line 360 through 376, that was taken out of originally, and we put them back in once again so it wouldn't trigger GORC. So the university system was added back in, the rehab folks were added back in, and the Department of Labor was added back in. To the best of my knowledge, those are all the changes we made at the suggestion of the governor's office so that GORC would not be triggered. And we accept all those changes, and I'll be happy to answer any specific questions regarding the bill, but I wanted to address Gort first.
All right, so it looks like the bill that passed the House had 33 pages. We now have 35. That's just the addition of those extra sections at the request of the governor's
Yes,
office.
Mr. Chairman, that's it. It's just adding those things back in. That's all it is.
And, you know, just from learning how to review and look at bills, we learned that a strike through on our versions where you're taking something out of existing law, underline words are where we're adding something new.
That's correct.
Most of this bill appears to be existing law. You're not really changing the world here from what I can tell.
Said much better than what I could state. We did not underline anything. We just, what we'd struck, we put it back in. It's back in the existing law.
So how, give me about a 1-minute summation, how you're changing existing law by passing this bill.
There's a couple of things we're doing. You heard Senator Brass talk about the 48 hours versus 60 hours, which is a requirement in the educational setting. We had required 3 years of supervision before. Now it's 2. That did not trigger Gort because it's a wash. It's exactly the same thing. It's a complete wash. That is a change, though. The other thing is in compliance with the counselor's compact law, where that other people can be licensed in other states. They accept ours and we accept theirs. This is in compliance with what the compact law puts, and that is the 60 hours. The other thing, we had a lot of really outdated language which would say such things like this is until 1998, and after 1998 it goes out of existence. We updated a lot of law that just took it out that was already not applicable because the time factor had run. And those are basically, I would say, the major changes in the bill as is in front of you now. Originally it was much, much different, but as it's in front of you now, those are the 2 major changes.
Good. Well, I guess we owe a debt to the House for struggling through it in such great detail with all those 26 versions to get it almost right.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That'd be correct.
Now, after your meetings with the governor, you feel like you got it where everybody's happy.
Yes, sir. I believe everyone's happy. I don't know of any opposition to it, and particularly I think the governor's office is fine. We've incorporated everything they asked us to incorporate.
Nobody signed up to speak for or against it, so that's a pretty good sign you don't have a lot of opposition.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that is.
Anybody else got questions?
I just-
Senator
I
Ginn?
wanna add
Just
something.
questions now, before you get froggy.
And I appreciate the bill. One of the things that when I read something like this, I always think about, you know, they always, as I look at counselors, social workers, therapists, and the age-old question is if somebody volunteers to do that type of work, do they have to be licensed?
They would probably fall under the numerous amount of exceptions that are in here, including biblical doctrine, which is one that Representative Tommy Smith put in years ago. There are enough exceptions in here if someone is volunteering. If they're not saying, I'm a professional counselor, they would be able to do it, Senator. That's my understanding. There's just so many exceptions, and I'm not going to mislead you on that, they would fall under it. As long as they're not saying, I'm a licensed professional counselor, they could just be doing it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Other questions? All right. What's the pleasure of the committee?
Motion.
Got a motion to pass by Senator Brass. Second by Senator Kennedy? Sir. All righty. Any discussion? Yes, Madam Leader, you want to get involved in this situation with us? What you need? I'll let you can third it if you want to. Okay.
Let me let my friend Senator Harbison have a
If there was a third or the fourth, we'd do it.
You would if you could. All right. Well, let's consider your votes as that then.
I just want to say that,
All right. All in favor, raise your hand. Are there any opposed? All right. Once again, unanimous. Now that we got Senator Albers here, we're going to move on then to House Bill 1424. How was your picture with the governor, and was Mullis in there with you? He said he was.
There was a few other folks wanting some picture time.
All right. Yeah, it is. Chairman Powell, your timing's impeccable. Probably easier from that podium, yeah. All right, we're now considering House Bill 1424, the House version of COAM legislation. They're this year's version of it. And it sponsor, Chairman Alan Powell, will be presenting. Just let us know what you passed out over there and what you're accomplishing here. And then if you got extra time, love to know how this changed from last year's COAM legislation.
Very good, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, and ladies and gentlemen of the committee. I think you've already heard a version pretty well as close to this one as already from one of your own members this year. This is the COAM bill. Last year, you may remember, I went into detail with 544. I had a number of issues that dealt with the working relationships within the COAM industry. This year we've pared that down since there seems to be so much, so many questions about so many different parts to it. This bill before you, 1524, does four things. First, it puts the COAM industry and their relationship with the lottery, since the lottery is the governing authority. This puts them under the Administrative Procedures Act, something that I haven't heard anybody that had any problem, since that is a standard practice of regulated industries being under the Administrative Procedures Act, so that they're protected and they get fair treatment. That's what Section 1 does. Section 2 brings the Class A machines. That's what you would commonly know as the kiddie games, the crane games, and such as that. Right now, they've been restricted to a $5 prize for, I guess, 50 years or more. This raises it to $50. It puts it in par and even under what a lot of other states allow the maximum for that prize to be. So that brings that up into that category of a $50 max. I'm going to skip to Section 4. That's easier than get back into the Section 3 in a minute. Section 4, right now your fraternal organizations, your military, your VFWs, your AMVETS, a lot of those organizations, once upon a time, those organizations had these game machines in their establishments. Back several years ago, we changed the criteria to say that 50% of a business had to be something other than these games. That basically put a lot of our fraternal organizations out of business with raising money that actually helped their organizations. Legions, VFWs, those organizations that have always been noted that the money that they make from their charitable organizations go back into the military community and fraternal organizations. This would change the 50% rule as long as it's a 501c3 organization considered to be a charitable organization. This does away with the 50% rule. So that way these organizations could then put these machines back into their locations, up to 6 with a maximum of I believe 9 if that's the will of the local governments of where they reside. Then I want to back up to Section 3. This is the language that we have talked about. I've testified in this committee. I've had other legislators has testified. This deals with the gift card. Now, I've heard every argument in the world, but I still maintain that knowing the history of this industry, and this industry has from time to time gotten out of hand. Once upon a time when the video poker industry was running rampant in this state, it cast a bad view to this industry. We've dealt with them at that time. They were put out of business. We put specifications on what kind of machines. But these machines are not gambling devices. These machines are for non-cash redemption. I've heard people talk about, well, we need to tax them, we need to do this and that. COAM industry, they're in a partnership with the state of Georgia through the Lottery Commission. These machines, they're tethered to the State Lottery Commission through online so that the lottery knows what they're doing. And this idea of the gift card would take it to the next step to do the one thing that I've always said that needed to happen. We need to give it a reason so that people out there that are paying out cash illegally, that they have no reason to pay out cash. by going to a gift card and with the current structure with the lottery and these machines being online, this takes away any rationale or any reason for any merchant to pay out cash money. And that, quite frankly, is the main issue to me, to clean this industry up from anybody who would do it the wrong way. Money that would be brought in, yes, it would bring in a lot of sales tax money, because as y'all know right now, that the gift cards or the redemption is only for in-store purchase. This takes it to that level that they could take a card, the gift cards, that would be non-redeemable for cash, that they could go to whatever merchant, whatever restaurant, no matter what it is, and they could trade that in. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what that does. As a footnote to this, I would tell you that this industry went from 2019 that they raised $92 million in the tax for the lottery. In 2020, it went from 92 to 145 million. And this year, when the numbers come out, it could possibly be as high as 190 to 200 million. And it is this is the fastest growing revenue source for the Georgia Lottery. The Georgia Lottery has in fact done so extremely well that they're at about $1.5 billion in surplus funds right now, which is about 800+ million more than is mandated by law. Be glad to stand for questions to my friends on the committee.
All right. I'm going to get you, because of your, just your institutional knowledge, both of the legislative process and this industry, to back us up a little bit and tell us about some of those problems with the industry. I hadn't done the detailed, legal research, but supposedly during Roy Barnes' administration, these machines were outlawed altogether.
Not the machines that we have today. In the late 90s or in the 90s, the video industry at that time that wasn't as regulated as it is today, it became quite common for video poker to come in from across the state lines, and those COAM operators, they were putting them out, and there was an abundance of illegal cash payouts that was being made. It had gotten so far out of hand that we even had across this state, we had some facilities that were being built just to have video poker machines in it. It reached a certain point of a fever pitch that legislation was brought forth, and the video games themselves that were commonly called poker machines were banned in this state. So that's the reason today that the skill games that you see today that are used, you don't see cards, you don't see certain numbers that are affiliated to that. I mean, that's basically what happened.
Were those also banned in South Carolina about the same time, or was that a little bit later?
After they were in Georgia.
So that was when Nikki Haley was governor.
These things had gone so far along. And in Georgia, you have to remember, when we talk about this industry, non-cash redemption, this has been on the books in Georgia forever. The gift certificates, they've been on the books since '79. What we're saying is take it to that step of giving it to a card, because that card would then be sure that we don't wind up with the same problems that we had once before, or the problems that we see today. There's always reports that come back that some of the retailers that have the machines, I always hear that there's always some that get caught from time to time. Now, how many are actually paying out cash? I don't know. But the locals may know, but they've got to enforce that law. Right now that these machines are hooked up into the lottery terminal, which was another issue progressively of what we've done over the years, we put the machines under the lottery. They were under the GBI, they were under the revenue, they've been moved around from time to time. Then a few years back, we put them under the lottery since we designated the proceeds to go to the lottery. And that's where they currently reside.
Now, sort of the big issue of cash. What was the evil of cash back in the day that we prohibited?
The evil of the cash payout was, quite frankly, it was illegal.
But why?
This state, because this state does not recognize gambling.
But I thought
The
y'all were
defin- the
contending this is a
definition
game
of-
of skill.
The definition of gambling is the paying out of cash, as opposed to giving away gifts or prizes or merchandise.
All right, so
That's considered the legal definition of the difference. And because we have a constitutional prohibition on gambling still to this day, then that's the reason that you can't pay out cash, nor should they at this point until there's a constitutional amendment approved by the people and the voters of this state. If they want to see it happen, if they want to see gambling, then they'll put it forth. If they don't, then so be it. We'll live within the rules.
well, if you were to consider these gift cards, a debit card, as a cash equivalent, would that require a constitutional amendment for us to go to gift cards?
But they are not a cash equivalent. They are a gift card that could be used for trading of merchandise and the sales tax to be paid to the state.
But by allowing you to trade them for merchandise anywhere in the state of Georgia or elsewhere at the location where you want it or somewhere else, doesn't that eviscerate the 50% rule? I mean, I could see there being a store that sold nothing but gift cards of every kind under the rainbow, and they didn't have a product in that store that they sold.
Maybe there's a misunderstanding about what we're talking about, a gift card. We're not talking about the gift cards that they can already trade for winning points or whatever. We're talking about a closed-in gift card that those could be put in the machine, their winnings, or they could put it in to click off whatever they're playing on the machine. That goes onto that, and then they could take that card to trade their points for whether it be products or meals or whatever it may be. That's not cash. They cannot, these cards are constructed as such that they can't be given and they can't be used to withdraw cash. They can only be done for products.
At the store you want them at, or anywhere in the state of Georgia? Or elsewhere?
Anywhere in the state of Georgia.
So that effectively eviscerates the 50% rule, where you no longer have to trade it for merchandise at the store you want it at, right?
The 50% rule is a rule that governs who can have machines. Not the trade-in, is who can have the machines.
Okay.
You've got to have 50% of any sales in a store has got to come from non-COAM related issues.
Will that rule remain in effect everywhere other than VFWs and AMBETs and such as that?
Yes, it certainly would.
Right now, the other rule that's been a sort of a part of this entire scheme is you can't trade them for alcohol and tobacco products, right?
That's correct.
And is that why we don't have them at bars and restaurants now, where they make the majority of their income from selling alcohol?
You know, I couldn't tell you how many are in bars and restaurants. I generally try to do my drinking at my house.
Well, much safer. Would this, I'm hearing from the industry that one of the reasons they want these gift cards is so they can begin to place them in bars and restaurants where you're not currently seeing them. Have you heard that, or you know the industry better than we do?
I do not know that. I think that you have them at some restaurants and bars. Most of these things are limited by the number. One of the things that we did years ago was we limited the number of machines that could be at any particular location.
Okay.
So that number is 6 unless local governments will allow, I believe, to go up to 9.
They can go to 9,
That's the number.
yeah.
Yes.
All right. So on the VFWs, how they would just pay it out with a gift card, because they don't sell products, generally speaking.
What a VFW, some of these, they may have a restaurant facility, they may have food service, but overall they have no merchandise. So it does not pay them, or it wouldn't be to their use to have these machines now. But if they had a gift card, then that's what those patrons they would then use the gift card, and then they could do whatever they want to do with it, and that'd be go and trade it for whatever.
Okay. Other committee members have questions for Chairman Powell? Senator Harbison.
Thank you, Chairman Powell. I appreciate you bringing this forth once again. I just wanted to ask a question for clarity. You mentioned that the VFWs are 501c3s, and they're not 501c19 as well? Or?
They may be.
Okay.
Charitable organizations, not for profits, is what we're talking about.
And, do you think we could add that in? Because I think I'm almost positive some of them are 501c19s, but I don't want to, get too deep in that. Maybe we can visit that and clarify.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Other questions? If you end it with "Isn't it true?" we'll let you say it.
Isn't it true that I joined Mike Beatty when I first got here 22 years ago and opposed, what was it, video poker, the big deal. And isn't it true now that I realize that we cannot govern against morality or ethics or with individuals? That's their mom and dad's role, not ours. So isn't it true that I am for all of this, from the gift cards to the marketing and whatever? So I just sit here waiting to see what is going to happen. But I hope one day that the COAM industry has the right to meet their customers' needs.
And I do thank you for your comments, and that's correct. I think there's been a certain level of hypocrisy that has been generated over time. When we made the COAM industry basically a handmaiden to the lottery, they became a partner in this state. And we have progressively done things to rein in the fact of illegal payouts, such as cash payouts. Thus, we did the issue a few years ago of putting them online, that there's a line that runs from these machines to the database of the computer terminal over to lottery. And that was the purpose for that. They've raised tremendous amounts of money. I am told that this is the fastest growing tool that the lottery has for raising revenue.
And it's growing exponentially without gift cards so far, right?
Well, I presume it does.
Yeah.
And that's the reason but to me, this whole issue to clean up this industry, the most logical step is to take any enhancements to anybody paying out cash. I think I've used the term in this very committee that once a gift card is put into effect, that any retailer or merchant that pays out cash, not only are they going to be banned from life, they're too stupid to be in the business.
I'm fascinated by the fixation on cash. I mean, what's so dirty, what's so evil about paying now that the lottery has it wired in? They are getting their cut. They know what's being won and what their share is. Why is it bad to get cash but not bad to get a gift card that can be spent like cash?
My friend, when I talk about the hypocrisy of this issue, I go back to what I'd said. Non-cash is not considered to be gambling. That goes back to the circus games, the carnival games. Everybody loves to go to the fair and they love to throw their money down and throw whatever balls at lid milk bottles or whatever they do to win a prize. Well, that's always been the issue here. People do like that. People like to gamble. They may not call it gambling, but they do. You can go to a church that has fundraisers. They have raffles at church. That's gambling. The same to these civic groups. They're raising money for good causes. The only difference is these are commercial companies. They're the ones that pay. There's nothing, the state puts no money whatsoever into their operations. They pay for these $1,000 machines or whatever these things cost. The lottery has they pay nothing. They've had a budget for several years that they'd put $5,000 for marketing, and they don't even put that into it. So the state has been the one who has taken. We've benefited, the lottery has benefited from this. And it is my duty as a regulated industry chair and as an elected member, and that's to ensure that until the people of Georgia pass a constitutional amendment to legalize gambling, that these things need to remain non-cash, non-gambling. And for the folks that I understand that say they want to raise the tax and such as that, well, there's plenty of revenue that comes in. And this attitude that we have in our government or society today, that if somebody is doing pretty well or they're prospering pretty well, well, let's just tax them a little deeper. Folks, that's not the right attitude to have. I'm happy for somebody who makes money because they're producing money not only for the state lottery, but these COAM operations between the stores and the masters, they're contributing back to this state.
All right. I'm going to ask you one other thing because I remember it from, it may be your and my offline conversations, but I think it was your bill last year. The fractional sales issue. That was something that was in your bill originally in the House last year that passed?
That was one of many issues that was in that omnibus bill last year.
Okay. And you're abandoning that issue now? Explain that to us.
I'm abandoning that issue like so many other parts of that bill to give y'all something a little bit more direct to look at, something that would have a major benefit both to these companies and to the lottery as a whole.
Okay. All right, we got several other people lined up. If you will, got a question from Senator Ginn.
You have more people to speak?
Yes.
I noticed you have it on the agenda as a hearing only.
That is correct.
Is there any way that we could go ahead, because I know we're getting closer to sine die.
No, it's not going to be voted on today, and we've advised the public of that, hearing only. Yeah. We got a question, Senator Kennedy.
Morning, Representative Powell.
Good morning.
I think I follow your line of thought in the distinction, certainly the distinction and importance between cash and the gift card. And so my question is, I'm thinking if we pass this, I'm trying to understand exactly what the gift card is. Is it any different than a debit card, for example? I recently renewed my contacts prescription, and then I got a $100 Visa card in the mail that I could use anywhere. Is that the type of instrument we're talking about?
That would be the type of instrument you're talking about. They could be programmed, that they could be put into the machine so that if you had points or whatever credits on it, it could feed the machine to play it. Any that you use one would then go on the card. And they would all be reported to the Lottery Commission so they would know where that money is going to.
And that card, is it reloadable so that you can, or is it a one-time use card like the thing I get is a one-time use card?
It could be a reloadable or it could be a one-time.
And who all can load money onto the card? Is that restricted to COAM locations, or could any merchant load money onto the card?
That would be restricted to the machines.
To the machines. What does that mean?
To those people who are running the machines, and it would go, and it could be a lottery-driven card. It could be a private-driven card that'd have to meet the specifications as long as it is made to the point that it can't be traded, nothing can be traded for cash.
And on that point, that raises a question that occurred to me. If someone uses the card to then purchase something, can they take that item back to the merchant or some merchant and return it to try to get a refund?
Oh, I'm sure that they could, but I think that would be skirting the law. And, we don't live in a perfect society. If we lived in a perfect world, we wouldn't have to worry about folks paying out cash money in a state that it's illegal to pay out cash.
Right, I understand that. So the answer is yes, that someone could take that merchandise somewhere and return it to get a refund. Would they be able to get cash as a refund for an item that they no longer wanted?
I guess if they could find a merchant that would do that.
Okay.
Or it could be programmed. There's such the technology that I'm not a technology buff, but they tell me that you can do about anything with these type of programmable cards. If you want to program them so that once they're used, that nothing could be downloaded back or cash could be put back into it by trading it. I mean, these are specific cards, as I understand it, for a specific purpose.
And there any merchant that's within the COAM world could load onto them, right? The card is not specific for a particular merchant.
Not the merchant, but the machine. The merchants don't add to the card. The machines on winning and losing
Okay.
is what goes on with the card.
So any machine then connected to Intralot would be able to load?
Any machine that
Okay.
is a legal machine, controlled, licensed by the state of Georgia and the Lottery Commission.
Okay. One more question?
Sure, go ahead.
I'm trying to follow the line of thought on the gift card and the distinction between that and cash or cash equivalent. Has anyone expressed a legal opinion? Have you guys obtained a legal opinion that says that distinction is clear enough in the law now such that a constitutional amendment is not required to opt out of or get around the gambling
To
prohibition
my
that you
good
spoke
friend,
to
the
earlier?
senator, this business has been in Georgia enough years, and there's been enough pitfalls and legislation and issues that this would have certainly come up, and it has come up, and that's the reason it's always been ruled that gambling is a paying out of cash, not merchandise.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Catherine, you ready to run the slideshow? You want to, it might be before we take the other testimony, just to show the industry where it's come from and gone. Okay. I'd like for you to speak if you can. No, I'll do it. I'll do it. Okay. Let's pass these around. And give one to Chairman Powell as well. Look here. What's it? All right.
Will said whose slideshow is this?
This is Senate Research. Yeah, I'll do that. All right, so they're going to give you a copy of this as well, Chairman Powell. And me trying to get my arms around this issue and what kind of money we're talking about and comparing the revenue rates, et cetera, I asked Senate Research to prepare us a summary, and they've done this with the input people in the industry as well as the Georgia Student Finance Commission. Is that their name now, that runs the HOPE program? And the Lottery Board has provided this. This is compiled from several different sources, and if anything's incorrect or somebody has more accurate data, later present it to me or Cindy, my administrative assistant. Amanda's passing these out. Will you just put 4 or 5 of them up there on the edge in case somebody else wants one? Keep some for the committee members that didn't show today. This is I'm gonna see if I'm skilled enough to use the clicker here. What do I point it at? All right. This was provided by the Lottery Commission to show the increases in COAM revenues and the returns to education or to the lottery, which spends its money on HOPE scholarships and pre-K programs. And it tracks it through the years when we first started regulating, where we put it all online, tethered, as Chairman Powell mentioned, back to 2015. Your top line number, some of you may not be able to see it quite as clear, but we have the paper copy, shows the amount of money in. That's the play in the machines, how much money put in the machines. The second number is how much is paid out. That's the winnings that the players get. And then you get the remainder is profit to the industry. So this industry's gone in 2015 from $403 million in play to $2 billion in 2016, 2.2 in 17, 2.8 in 18, 2.6 in 19, and then it's just gone crazy here these last 2 years. It was over $3 billion in 2020 and over $4.5 billion in 2021 fiscal year. The current split of this partnership between the state and the master licensees, which own the machines, and the operating licenses, the stores where they are, is 45% of the profit goes to the master licensee, 45 goes to the operator, and 10% goes to the state. So if you go down to the very bottom, it shows you, it's in orange up here on the screen, the amount that was paid. It says to education, that means to the lottery. So that was available for use for Hope scholarships and for pre-K programs. So this most recent year we have reports on, since we're still in 22, had $4.5 billion played in these machines, and $3.2 billion was won by the players. They got it back, and so that leaves you just over, it looks like, $1.3 billion in profit to the industry, out of which they paid their 10% to us. All right, I'm going to see if I can walk you through how we work it. On the slides I'm about to show you, gross sales is the total of all the either lottery tickets purchased or play in these machines before taking out deductions. Net profits are those gross sales, the amount of play, less the prizes paid out and other expenses in running these enterprises. So there's a difference between the two. So I want us to look at the difference in the lottery ticket sales and the COAM sales, how we compare those. Now, I may be a little bit off on some of this, but this is as close as we can get from looking at the governor's budget report, the money from the lottery board, the reports from them, Georgia Student Finance Commission. It's close. We got maybe some more precise numbers, but it looks like the COAM report showed this last year there were $4.5 billion in sales. There were actually more than $4.5 billion sales. It was over $5 billion in sales to the lottery in the same year. This is our most recent year, 2021. And then you can see the prizes paid out, close to the same percentage paid out in prizes, somewhere 75% or so goes back to the players. So the net profits to the lottery on traditional lottery games was just over $1.25 million in 2021. The net profit to the industry, the COAM industry, was also about $1.2 billion. And then if you go to the bottom line where it's highlighted, out of that, $120 million would have gone to the lottery. So the purpose of this is to show for the same amount of sales, $4.5 billion, the lottery tickets generate $1.2 billion. The COAMs give the state of Georgia $120 million, about 3% of the gross profit, which is 10% of the net profit. In the committee sub that we passed out before crossover day on Senator Dixon's bill, which I believe was pretty close to a mirror image of this one, Representative Powell, close to it, we proposed a 35-35-30 revenue split so that the operator licensees reduced their cut from 45% to 35%. The master licensees went down 10%, and the state picked up that difference more in line with what some other states was doing. And this would show you how that would impact the returns. You still would have had the net profits of 1.2. The master license would get their 35% locations. It would greatly increase the lottery share there to $360 million. So we wanted to look and see, Mr. Snyder was arguing with us a little bit the other day about how this was a tax on the industry of 10%. So I had Senate Research look and see what do other states do with the same thing. In many states, they call this, instead of the COAM industry, distributed gaming. So it's gaming machines that are not in casinos. And you can see the range of what other states do. I mentioned in our meeting that Illinois is a third. That's where some of the industry is. You see that shows it at 34% rounded up. Pennsylvania is 52%, South Dakota 50%, Louisiana 32.5%, Montana's 15%, Oregon, which is a state-owned operation, they own the machines there, is a range of 11 to 27.5%, and you see Georgia's sort of at the bottom of the pile here under our current law. Many people compare these to slot machines. I know the industry's careful to say they're games of skill, et cetera, but I think generally speaking, they're very similar to slot machines, which are found in casino settings. And so we looked at what states are charging tax on these profits if they are deemed to be gaming and they're in casinos. Maryland's 44%. New York has a range 37 to 66. Massachusetts 25 to 40. Nevada and Mississippi have 7.5, where they have pretty much wide open, no limitations on the number of casinos, et cetera. One of the things we're looking at is that this is a situation where the lotteries essentially now has two branches. They have traditional lottery tickets and draw games, and then they have the COAM revenue. They control both of them, and the combination of those funds is what funds the Hope Scholarship and pre-K programs. We had, Senator Tippins, you might fill us in more here in a minute, but my recollection was after Hope reform, we had dropped down to as low as 76% of 100% funding of tuition on Hope Scholarships. The governor's most recent budget proposal with these new revenues shows that it ought to be about, or is estimated to be about 90% of the full ride tuition now. Still a significant shortfall, probably $100 million or more. So in 2022 budget proposals, the lottery proposes to put $1.3 billion towards education out of the $1.5 billion or so in profits they'll have. That's the divide. It's split between pre-K about a third, Hope grants and scholarships 2/3. According to these projections, we're looking at being able to fund it at about 90%, so we're still $100 million short of fully funding the Hope Scholarship, which for many years was fully funded, and now you get to Hope, but you don't necessarily get your full tuition paid. I mean, you definitely don't unless you're a Zell Miller Scholar. I don't know that we can see this as well on the screen, but everybody, if you'll follow through with your slideshow in front of you. This shows the Georgia Lottery Commission's sales and profits, and that's why one of my other slides might be a little bit shy. It shows back in 2016 there was $4.24 billion in total lottery sales. Now it's growing to $5.6 billion now. And you can see the COAM money on the third line there goes from $2 billion to the $4.5 we showed previously, and you can see the different returns. So essentially in fiscal year 2021 on your last column, you'll see the traditional lottery profit's going to be $1.4 billion out of $5.6 billion in sales, and add to that the $145 million in COAM revenue to our total return of $1.54 billion to education, and you saw how that was split. These are some of the concerns of the Lieutenant Governor that we feel like if we were to get closer to be more in line with other states' revenue splits on that COAM section, it could increase that to a point where it might get enough to close this shortfall if we're going to go there. We're going to meet again on Tuesday, and we will address the bill at that time. We're going to take more testimony. Representative Powell, do you have other comments you want to make?
Yeah, man, I'm not going to disagree with the numbers. I am a numbers person. The only one that I would have to say is in this comparable, the states that you had mentioned and what their splits were, I think if you look at them, these are gambling states. And I need to remind the committee members, this is non-cash redemption. Now, I would probably make a proposition that if, and I know the Senate likes to deal with horse racing and sports betting and the such. So I would suggest that if you want to raise money equitably, if you want to go up to the same amount of tax on COAMs, then let them pay out cash. But you've got to put it on as a ballot, and the people of Georgia have to determine if that's what they want to do.
I'm beginning to think you may be right that before we go to gift cards, it might ought to be on the ballot if it's presumed to be a cash equivalent. Before we go there with the state of Georgia, we may need to let the citizens weigh in, but we'll hear some other folks here. Mike Griffin from, yes, you got a question?
I do have a question about you.
All right.
The when I look at the report you've got, I'm sure it's accurate.
I think it's close. I don't think it's exact.
For me, one of the things that my state rep said, the Chairman Powell, he's probably been down to the fair down in Comer, Georgia. Said where they have a lot of amusement games. How much money do they push into the lottery?
None that I know of.
There's a lot of expense that they have setting up the fair and buying all the prizes and the thing there. So my question is that's where I think this report doesn't do justice because of the cost of operating the all of the prizes and the things there. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
All right.
The only thing that I would like to leave the committee to think about is I understand that having been in the legislature, I see what a lot of people, and it's irresistible to try to tax people when they're doing well. And these are industries that have done well. But I want to remind the committee that the whole reason for putting this gift card out there, and that's to stop the illegal payout of cash. And that's the sole reason behind this. If these people will make more money, then that means the state of Georgia will make more money. I don't know that the industry would make more money, except for the fact that people might play these games, which I've never quite understood that idea. But people do like to play games. That's the reason that the polls have consistently showed that 75% of Georgians polled, they want the right to vote on gambling. But I would suggest to this committee, before you start looking at how to raise tax and how to pluck the feathers out of the turkey, you need to consider what is fair and what's equitable. If you want to treat these like cash gambling devices, then that's what you need to do. But right now, these are non-cash redemption, and it's incumbent on us to stop any paying out of illegal cash right now.
How bad is that problem?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Quite frankly, I have heard members, there seems to be a predisposition to demonize this industry. You know, I think it's always been demonized. I remember when I was a kid that my mama used to pitch a fit when her young'un would slip off to the fair and put his lunch money in the whatever the games. But that's been demonized to the point now that I see these folks, as you spoke about an individual that's talking about taxing it. I'm hard-pressed to believe that somebody who would be in favor of certain types of gambling, that they try to treat this as gambling, but this is non-cash redemption, and there's where the difference is.
Is there an enforcement problem with folks that do pay out cash prizes?
I think there is, but that's only my personal view. There's one of the reasons that I have included the APA Administrative Procedures Act. I do think that we have dirty people that are regulating this industry. We had a situation, you may all remember, that over at the Revenue Department, that we had a whole division that was basically taking and confiscated goods, and they were buying gold-plated this and all of that. And then y'all may remember the hammer got dropped on them folks. Do I think that there's some other things? Yeah, I think there's other things that go on. I think that we have some people that are supposed to be in charge of monitoring the situation that I have questions about how they do it and how they go about doing their business. But to tell you what, the only way we know if somebody is paying out cash is if they're caught. If the Lottery Commission or if a local law enforcement agency catches them, that's how they're caught. But when I hear a lot of the people, and I've offered this to members, when they tell me about, well, such and such has got them machines in there and they're paying out cash, tell me who they are. I'll call the lottery, I'll call the local law to ask them, give me the address. And then we find out when I hear about these illegal operations down in Middle or South Georgia, then you come to find out they say, well, they're behind doors. Well, if they're behind doors, they're not legal machines. If they're not plugged into the lottery, they're an illegal machine and they're guilty of a felony. And that's how serious a lot of us have been over the years to clean this industry up.
Do you know how many master licensees there are? Is there a limit on those?
Yeah, I think there's not, I don't think, but I believe there's like 130 or 40 maybe master licensees.
Okay.
Yeah.
All righty, thank you. Mike Griffin.
Thank you.
Oh, I do have a question
And I
from
got a
Pro
question,
Tem.
Believe it or not, I have been watching this committee downstairs.
Do believe you?
I know that's hard to believe. What I was going to ask earlier, you showed a slide. It says distributed gaming among states. Are those all the states that have gaming?
They're not. They're representative.
Okay.
I don't know, Catherine, are they all?
It's not. Okay, just a
Representative sample.
fairly represented sample. Okay. Well, what's fair is fair, right?
Senator
I
Mullis.
think-
Thank you.
Yes,
Senator, I think the more important question to look at that is how many of those states that were representative are cash payout states considered real gambling. Illinois, for example, where I think a lot of that third split came from, that is a gambling state. They pay out cash in Illinois. And there's a difference between paying of cash and non-cash redemption.
May I follow up? Do we know which one of those states are cash payout states? Okay, I just it struck me as maybe not apples to apples. Just at some point. This is a hearing only, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
If you could try to get that for Tuesday, it'd be helpful.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman.
Senator Mullis, go ahead.
And that was what I was going to point out too. I think that the display is good and outstanding. Thank you for ordering that, and thank you for putting it together. But I think until you have which states pay out in cash and which don't, you don't really have a true disposition of the states you're showing. Anyway, thank you.
All right, Mike Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike Griffin, Public Affairs Representative with Georgia Baptist Mission Board. And Representative Powell and I, we go way back and been friends for a long time. One of the things I admire about him is he shoots straight with you. We may not agree at times on conclusions, but Alan's always been, Representative Powell, Chairman Powell, always been straight with me about what he believes and conclusions. And one of the things I like, he says, sometimes you can have gambling even if you don't call it that. And that's what we have here. We have gambling. We don't call it that because legally it's not. Technically, I know it's not, but it's gambling. And I know it's not gambling by the legal definition of a cash payout, because that's the same thing they're referring if you've got a church doing a raffle. They don't want to call it a gambling, but that really is gambling. That's why I didn't even participate in turkey shoots when I was a chaplain with the fire department. I said, there's no way I'm going to ever preach against gambling, and y'all see me down there doing a turkey shoot one time. They're like, look at that hypocrite. And there's a lot of things a lot more safer at doing a turkey shoot than it is playing a video slot. But my point is I do want to be consistent. And how's that? Lunch is just around the corner. Preaching is always near lunch. I don't know why. But anyway, so our concern as Georgia Baptist with is not changed in any way whatsoever. And that is that we do believe that this is addictive, and we do believe it's destructive in our communities. And that's why we're concerned about it. I do believe that the $50 gift card will enhance the industry. And I understand, I do stand with those in favor of greater restrictions, and I do understand that is the goal, among other things, to do, and that is to do better at restricting or better at regulating, should I say, the industry, so that you begin to lessen the corruption that's in it. But there comes a time when you can't compete with corruption. You got to stop it. You got to deal with it. And I think that's part of the issue here. And part of the issue is why you have the corruption is the nature of what it is. And it just, you always see gambling and corruption always seem to be holding hands. No matter where it is, you can sanctify it, you can purify it, you can make sure that you send more money to somewhere else to kind of somehow balance the evil that may be coming out of it. But it's still what it is. And that's my concern. And I know I'm probably one of those people that they say demonize it, but I'm just saying it's just simply out there. I've got a phone right here, and a police officer sent this to me last night. This happened on the 14th of this month. Said Georgia mother arrested after leaving 17-month-old son locked in a car while she gambled, deputies say. In Chattooga County, deputies arrested a Georgia woman after they say she left her toddler locked in a car alone for at least a half an hour while she played a gambling machine. Now, it's not gambling, but that's what happened. Now, you could have done the same thing doing something else that you left your kid in the car. I understand that. That's not the only reason. I'm just simply saying this is just one. And don't believe me, Jeff, go on Google and Google it yourself and look at what is being said. And again, I mean, I've got stats that have said, GBI have said that most of them are doing cash payouts. I've got a quote from that. You know, I've got all kinds of information. You don't have to, again, depend on me. Eric Groth, who's with the president of the Georgia Council on Problem Gamblers, I mean, that's a part of their addiction counseling goes to those that have been on these machines. And we were just in here a couple of weeks ago with Michael Callahan, who's with the Fraternal Order of Police, who testified about investigations that he's been on about the extreme corruption that's going on. The other day, I was at a truck stop. I don't need one. And I went into the room where they were at, and it wasn't a separate room, and it was darker. It was not as light as it. And I went in there, and I'm glad I didn't get any pictures of me coming out of there. But I've got on my phone, I took pictures of the machines in there. And I'm just telling you, I know you're looking at me, it looks like slot machines. I know they're not. We had 2 here last year, and Steve Gooch played them. I didn't. But I'm just saying, there are things, as Alan said, a lot of things that are gambling. They just don't call it that. Now, I want to say something to you committee members, and you don't have to answer this question. I'm not trying to embarrass you. But how many of you in the last year have played the lottery at least once on the committee? Every day. So 2 of you have played the lottery in the last year.
I guess I'm falling down on support of education.
Well, I'm just saying, if the rest of you, if Hope Scholarship was dependent on the rest of you other than you two, there wouldn't be a dime in it. So I'm just saying we have to be careful that we don't put all of our hope into Hope. There's other ways to do this, but I'm just simply saying because all of you understand the risk and the danger that this is, and it's reaping havoc on those who really can't afford it the most, and we're dealing with mental health issues. And this is one of those issues that we just cannot. I know we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. However, we do need to limit and keep it under as much control as possible because of the danger that it causes to our families, our children, and the mental health issues that we have in our state today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hang on. Senator Mullis has a question for you.
Yes, thank you so much. Am I on? I don't think I'm on.
There you go. Thank you for being here. And after your service there, should we pass the plate before I ask a question? That is a question, by the way.
Yeah, we will do a little
All right.
offer.
Isn't it true, though, in your mission to help tighten up this industry, and I know the Lieutenant Governor and a few others don't like it, but wouldn't a card help indeed do that?
I think it will enhance the industry and cause
okay,
more
so you
people to
agree with
play.
this issue then?
It will cause more people to play.
Do you think so?
And the more people that play, the greater chance of being addicted.
We improved the Hope Scholarship, so I agree with you. This bill would help tighten it up on the lack of cash being given out if the card passes. But I know it's not going to do that here. But in the future, it will. And I would salute and applaud tightening up the industry, especially with the card.
I can't say that I think that would be a final conclusion.
So you're still good with cash being given out then?
No, I'm not.
Okay,
for
I was
cash.
confused.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying you're just going to enhance the use of it, and I don't think you're going to stop the other at all. That's
All
just
right.
my personal opinion.
And in
They're
my
just going to have to do more.
And in my appreciation of
But-
you being here, because I do appreciate you being here, isn't it true that Georgia already has gambling? This is the answer.
Yes.
Okay. And I know you, isn't it true that you don't play the lottery because of the gambling aspect to it?
That's a good conclusion.
All right, I'm trying to help you here. But isn't it true there are probably members in your organization that has a child or a relative that's been through college because of the lottery,
Well,
which
I
is
said
gambling
for
money?
years I'm not opposed to Hope. I just don't like the mechanism that's used to fund it. And
Yeah.
I've talked to a representative that was here when the Hope was passed, and there were other options that, or at least one particular option they looked at and chose not to, that would probably raise as much or more money that you still could have done. But nevertheless, it's there, and that money has been used well. But there's just some things that it's creating. As a rule, for every dollar you raise in tax revenue from gambling, it costs you 3 more in government expense on socioeconomic issues. So you're in one essence, when it comes to gambling revenue, you're pushing the toothpaste from one end of the tube to the
Yeah, I
other,
got you.
basically.
And my last question.
Creating other needs.
Isn't it true that we could maybe take this all the way back to an infant drinking milk? Because the infant who drank milk ended up maybe learning how to play cards and then learning to gamble. Could it all go back to drinking milk? I've heard that analogy on everything.
I don't
that
know what the milk's
the reason
about.
they started smoking marijuana is because they started doing this and started doing that. Maybe why they started gambling was because this, and maybe even they drink milk as an infant. I think this all human nature, whether you like it or not. It's not some earlier incident that caused you to want to gamble or gaming or whatever. But
You have to understand that, if I might say,
Yes.
accessibility equals sales, sales equals consumption or participation, participation equals potential problems. So accessibility always has a lot to do with anything that is a liability to human beings, and you can do that from alcohol to gambling.
that's right. That's my
To
analogy.
drugs. Accessibility is the first gate you have to go through.
And I think it all starts at home, wouldn't you?
I do.
Okay, amen, brother.
We need more work there, definitely.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Edward Lindsay, I got 3 more speakers, we got 20 more minutes in the room. That's not to encourage you to spend 7, but.
I'll try not to filibuster here, Mr. Chairman. Very quickly, Mr. Chairman, my name is Edward Lindsay. I'm with the firm of Denton's, and I'm here representing Lucky Bucks, which is a large master license holder operating here in the state of Georgia. I want to sort of just very quickly, and many of the points were already raised by my good friend Representative Powell, but one thing I think is very important to understand, and I think you've already shown it, is that this is not an industry in distress. This is an industry that's growing, industry that's very beneficial to business here in Georgia, and is also very beneficial to the state of Georgia. One point that has not been raised in your data, however, is the secondary source of revenue that this industry provides to the lottery and therefore to the Hope Scholarship, and that is when winnings are redeemed with lottery tickets. There's not a specific number that's ever been given to us by the lottery folks, but the industry, and I've talked to several members of the industry, including my client, and they estimate around 60% of the redeeming goes in the way of lottery tickets. And to take your data that you showed already, that would add an extra $300 or $400 million a year that it goes into the Hope Scholarship as a result of this industry, over and above the 140 that it already gets. So I think that needs to be understood when it comes to the contribution that this industry gives to the state of Georgia, and in particular to the lottery and to the Hope Scholarship, already under underneath the existing rules. I think that's something that's very important for everyone here to understand. That unlike the lottery, which has to maintain the machines and everything else, this is all run by the private industry that provides the capital, that provides the workforces necessary to run this industry. So this is something that the lottery benefits very greatly from. Not just the $140 million that it got this year, not just the $180 million or so that Representative Powell estimated that they get from that 10% tax that they're already getting, but also from the redemption that's taken place. Now you have before you Representative Powell's bill. And let me say that I'm grateful that you're going to hold it to the next hearing, because I think it is very important to take a look not just at Representative Powell's bill, but our good friend, the Rules Chairman's bill, who in my client's position does a lot in terms of improving the industry.
Yeah, you'll need to tell us what's in that bill.
What is in that bill are specific provisions that enhance the relationship between the master license holder and the location, in terms of improving the locations, putting money in to help the stores improve the locations, and enhance the overall atmosphere of the particular rooms. Also strengthens the contracts that exist between the master license holder and the locations to help stabilize the industry overall. So his provisions, Mr. Chairman, we think, quite frankly, are even more important than what is already contained in some of these other bills that you've seen. And we certainly hope that you will take a hard look at your Rules Chairman's bill and include those
provisions in the House bill. Did you lobby to get those provisions in the House bill?
We've talked to some folks about
1424?
that privately. We did not go and testify about that, but we have done so. And we think very much that that Senator Mullis's bill has been out there for a while for everyone to consider. And so we would ask very much. This body has honored him in his last days. Very moving. I think the best way to honor him is to take seriously what he was proposing in terms of enhancing those relationships between the master license holder and the locations.
He's got 48 bills and more counting so far. How many of the rest of them we got to do to make him have 51 now?
51. Well, I think this is the one that my client is interested in. I can't speak to the other 50, Mr. Chairman, but just to that. Just real briefly, though, while this industry has enhanced not only the private sector in Georgia and has enhanced the lottery and enhanced, in particular, the Hope Scholarship over the last 10 years, any attempt to come back in now and raise the taxes would be very detrimental both to the smaller operators and to those wishing to bring additional revenue, or rather additional capital into the state of Georgia. We are all very familiar with the phrase, goes back 2 centuries, the power to tax is the power to destroy. While it may seem like a good idea underneath the existing rules, but by some to increase the taxes, you will diminish capital investment in this state. You will also hurt both the small and the large operators in this state. So we very strongly oppose any attempts to increase taxes in this state underneath the existing structure that presently exists. One last thing, while we do believe that Senator Mullis's bill ought to be taken a look at in addition to what is in Representative Powell's bill. Now, mind you, Representative Powell's bill has much of the same stuff that's in your Rules Chairman's bill. It's not so much that we're contradicting the two bills. We just believe that the best way to enhance the industry is to include those things. Because as you well know, I doubt very seriously you guys want to see a COAM bill next year or the year after. You guys don't want to look at this issue every year. So this is your opportunity to both take care of some of the concerns that Representative Powell has stated, as well as improving the relationships between the master license holder and the locations. So we encourage you to take a close look at that. Finally, while we do hope that we are able to come together with a bill that includes the language contained in your Rules Chairman's bill, if we do nothing this year, I want you to keep in mind that underneath the existing law, the lottery already has the power to set forth a more limited gift card. It's not it's not reloadable, but otherwise it's already gone through the pilot program. We would prefer a bill that's comprehensive, that deals with both Senator Mullis and Representative Powell's bill. But if you do nothing, some of the concerns that were raised earlier can be addressed by the GLC.
Their
Thank you.
pilot program showed that COAM sales went down by 2% by using a gift card.
In a very limited program, without any attempt by the GLC to market its lottery products. We believe that with a proper marketing, and we've seen some other industry analysis with proper marketing, that would not take place. That's rather speculative in nature, and we would simply ask that we wait and see what the actual numbers are before you undertake a step to add additional taxes to the industry.
Does your client approve of sections 1, 2, and 4 of Representative Powell's bill?
Yes.
Okay. What do y'all think about fractional sales issue?
We oppose it. The idea of limiting two private entities, from being able to decide whether or not to sell off part of its business to another is an interference with private enterprise. And it's
Okay.
not justified underneath the law, nor justified under the facts.
Explain to us what fractional sales refers to.
Fractional sales, let's just say you have one entity that has 30 locations.
Is that a location licensee there? Or?
Yeah.
So you can get a license as a location?
There are two sets of licenses. One is a master license holder, and one is a location
How
license.
many master licenses are there?
There are approximately, somebody here chime in, around 180.
How
And
many
there-
location licenses?
I don't know that one.
If you get a location license, can you put them at more than one location?
I believe that each location has to have a separate license, Mr. Chairman,
So
but
you
I'm
can
not an
use
expert in that
6
area.
or maybe 9 if the local government lets you.
Correct.
With a location license.
Correct.
All right.
But in terms of you asked about fractional sales. Let's just say this is dealing with master license holders. Is that, let's just say that you have 30 locations. You want to sell to another master license holder 5 of them because you want to raise additional capital. That's what a fractional sale
Okay.
is.
So you're selling your contractual relationship with certain location
Yeah.
licensees.
To another entity.
Because a master licensee will service numerous location license holders.
Correct. Correct.
And so
And
you
we
sell that contract, that agreement to provide the machines in
Yes.
their store?
Yes. So basically, what we're simply saying is that fractional sales is an interference with two private companies in terms of how they want to operate their business. And to the extent possible, we believe that the state should stay out of that as the number one state in the country to do business. That would be the sort of interference that I don't think this legislature wishes to go down. And we appreciate those that have opposed it. We appreciate Chairman Powell for not including it in his bill. We appreciate Chairman Dixon for not including it in his bill either. And so we simply ask that that definitely stay out.
But that was in his bill last year.
It was, but it's not in his bill this year.
Okay.
Past is the past, Mr. Chairman. I'm dealing with the president in the future.
Well, it's still sitting in this committee. All right, any questions for Mr. Lindsay? All right, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you,
Got
Mr.
two
Chairman.
more. Sheila Humberstone.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I can still say afternoon for a few more minutes. My name is Sheila Humberstone. I'm with Stonebridge Consulting, here today on behalf of the Georgia Association of Convenience Stores. We represent everybody from your large national chains to your medium-sized and small-size multi-generational family businesses. I want to make a couple of points about what we like in the bill, and then I'm going to try to clarify some of the things that we've heard today. Number one, we are incredibly supportive of the gift card. We believe that the gift card is the best equalizer. My members, our members, do not pay cash. They do not break that law. They are unwilling to break that law. And they are at a competitive disadvantage when the convenience store across the street does pay cash. Because not only do they generate more business for their COAM machines, but they can use the dollars generated from an illicit manner to lower the price on every product in their store. And so we are competitively disadvantaged disadvantaged by those that continually break the law. We are incredibly grateful for the addition of the APA. We've been asking for that since 2013, and we're thrilled to be able to have a voice at the table when there are rules and regulations being contemplated at the Georgia Lottery Corporation. Again, that's not a cut on them, but I think it's a reasonable expectation that when you are regulated, that when there are new policies, procedures, or regulations being proposed, that they are afforded an opportunity of public notice, public comment, and that those regulations would go to the committees of jurisdiction in the legislature. Finally, while it doesn't necessarily impact us, I wanted to talk a bit about the thoughtful way that the chairman addressed the fraternal and the veterans groups. There was some conversation about that early. And I know that historically there's been some concern that if we open that piece up, then we're going to have gambling dens, gambling houses. That 50% rule means 50% of your business has to come from something other than the games. So it's designed to make sure that you are a bona fide business, a bona fide grocery store, convenience store, hardware store, or bar and grill or restaurant. And so by limiting the single exception to that 50-50 to just those two organizations, I think will enable us to be sure that there's not a proliferation of gambling sites or gaming sites, if you will allow me to say. How we did that was we went into the tax code in Title 48. The definition for the fraternals is they have to have been in existence since 1880. So we don't have to worry about somebody creating a fraternal business tomorrow, organization tomorrow, and then therefore qualify for this exemption. So it is a really limited exception. On the veterans piece, so they'll have to be under Title 48. They're exempted from taxes in Title 48, and they will have had to have been authorized by Congress. And so again, that's a very narrow way to look at those two issues. Wanted to speak really briefly about this cash sort of gaming, gambling issue. So I respectfully would disagree with the author. I think the biggest differentiator between us and gambling, and particularly some of those states that were recognized, is that we are limited to $5 per play, and we are skill, and that makes us markedly different. $5. I mean, when you're in a full-fledged casino or route gaming market, you're not limited to a $5 in merchandise win.
You're
and
not
it's
limited
not
to the amount of play either, though, are you?
We're not. We're just
So
limited.
Somebody can sit there and put $100 in the machine. If it's $1 a play, they can win $500.
And most of what happens is we call it replay, right? They're replaying that because they can't win more than that $5 in that moment. So most of what you see that sort of goes on is just that same sort of $5 or $10 that was put in being recycled through the machine.
What's one play cost?
It depends on the convenience store and the location. I mean, I've seen them usually about $1, I think, is what I've seen originally.
So you put a $20 bill in there and you get 20 plays, you can get paid out up to $100.
Right.
Okay.
But generally, you're not going to win each time in a row. So you're going to lose some, and then therefore, some people will keep playing, some people will be done. It's like, it's a form of entertainment. Some people go to the golf course to unwind after work. Some people go to the movie theater. Some people play Wordle on their phone. Some people play these games. And it is entertainment for them. And when they go into a convenience store, then this is their sort of social hour with the folks that are in there with. It's not necessarily your form of entertainment. May not be my form of entertainment, but that is.
Back in the day, we had arcades. You had Pac-Man and
That's
you
right.
had Asteroids or whatever. You didn't get anything. You still play in entertainment, but there wasn't any reward for it.
That's right. So those are Class A games, and we still have those. And you also have similar Class A games like a skee ball that shoots out tickets. And those you do take to the front, whether you're in Dave & Buster's or Chuck E. Cheese or someplace else, and you can turn those tickets in for, a stuffed animal. Or if you're at a carnival, then, you hit the whack-a-mole, and if you hit the right thing, then you get a plush toy, off of the display.
Okay. Hey, I didn't mean to get you off your thing,
That's
but
okay.
while I'm thinking, Senator Harbison really good question about a 501c19 organization. You got any familiarity with that?
So I think if you look in the bill, let me see the page, let me pull the bill up. We've referenced 2 tax exemptions, so we don't have, I don't think, in the bill any reference to 501c3 or C19. It's solely a fraternal organization that's exempt from taxes, that's been in existence since 1880, or it's a veterans organization that's exempt from taxes, and they were identified as such through Congress. So last year, I think the language was a 501c3, and we heard some concerns that does that mean every single person who merely qualifies as a 501c3 would be afforded an opportunity to do this? And so in the chairman's wisdom, he narrowly drafted it this year to be more, to make sure you're taking care of the people that you want to take care of without opening it up wide.
Right.
The only other thing that I wanted to say, if I could, was, again, gift certificates are already in the law. They've been in the law from the beginning. It's found in 16-1235 and 50-2770. We have always been afforded the opportunity to do gift certificates.
And why do we need legislation allowing it now?
Because what we need the legislation for is to allow it to be off-premise. And originally, we were allowed to redeem those off-premise. But during the Barnes administration, they said it needed to be on that particular premise. But in fact, what's happened is it just increases the cash payout.
Where's the language in this that allows it to be off premise?
Let me pull up the bill.
Section 3.
Line 85. So for those of you that don't have it, notwithstanding this code section, a location or owner shall be permitted to allow a player of a bona fide coin-operated amusement machine to redeem winnings for a gift certificate or gift card, and the awarding of such gift certificate or gift card shall be the lawful act of in-store redemption and shall be permitted to be fully redeemed off the premise.
So isn't that the reason everybody's against cash is because you could go spend it somewhere else, and this now allows you to go spend your
So
gift card?
that's a really valid point. But the only argument I would make on that is right now we can redeem for a lottery ticket, and I can buy a lottery ticket, and it could be a winning lottery ticket, and I can get cash. So right now there is a perspective that if it's far enough from that original act, then it's deemed lawful.
Okay.
And this would be the gift cards that we're envisioning and are presented in this bill are such that they
Representative,
wouldn't.
Don't leave me yet. Dale. Don't catch him. I've been waiting till the end of the meeting. I needed you to tell me who's going to carry your bill. John Albers. Okay, you got it. Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's
Dale.
okay.
I've been watching him in the back room. I was going to catch him at the end of the meeting, but he was leaving.
I'm glad
us.
it wasn't me that was in
All
trouble.
right. He's not in trouble. He passed his bill.
That's right.
All right. I
So,
interrupt you. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I think we were talking about gift certificates, and that cash is, if you win a lottery ticket, then that has transformed that ultimate originating play from a COAM into cash, and that there doesn't seem to be an issue with that. And so again, these gift cards would not allow cash back, but I can't, right now somebody could win a case of soda pop at the I don't want to pick which kind,
Sure.
But could win soda pop, and then they could sell it on the street for cash. So there's always going to be that opportunity, but we're trying to make sure that in that first transaction that it is not a cashback opportunity.
Okay. So I'm not connecting the dots how this would prevent in any way other stores from still offering cash. If you got bad actors doing it now,
right.
If a player would rather get cash than a gift card, they're going to go to the place that'll pay them cash.
And as many laws as we pass down here, there's always going to be a certain percentage of people who break the law. But my folks don't, and we think it's going to give particularly GACS members, Georgia Association of Convenience Store members, an opportunity to have more business in their stores that they can compete lawfully, because that's the only way they're going to do it. And if that business does come to them, then it dissuades the negative behavior. Are there still going to be really bad actors that are really bad? These are probably the same folks that are selling single cigarettes out the back, right? I mean, I wish we could. I mean, they're not our members. We wish we could clean everybody up, but we do think this is the single best thing that we can do to clean up this industry.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Les, you got about 2 minutes, and we're going to lose the room. Les Snyder. That's why we let you talk first while they were still here. You go right ahead. They're leaving only to go work on other House bills and other committees that started at noon. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be brief. I would like the opportunity perhaps to talk again, but the analysis that you presented, again, just so it's clear and Center Research can double check it, but all the analogies you made to the other states are all states that pay cash. And every one of the other states that have coin-operated amusement machines that don't pay cash, that only do non-cash redemption, pay no additional tax to that particular state. So all of the revenue that you talked about these other states are collecting are on no-skill games, all cash payout. That is not what we do in Georgia. That's not what this industry wants to do in Georgia.
But you don't even have sales tax on these play.
No,
these
we have, but because we had sales tax at one point, Senator Cowser, and only $200,000 a year was collected. When we went to the master license and sticker and licensing system, we bring in close to between $10 and $15 million a year. So it's a much more efficient system for collecting taxes, and that everybody pays their fair share. So it's a tremendous increase, and it was an improvement that the industry brought forward to the legislature.
You're paying 10% instead of 7% sales tax now.
No. Let me say that we pay $15 million worth of fees, and in addition to that, we pay 10% tax on the gross monies that we receive from the lottery, and then we pay 10%. So ours is the highest tax rate of any business in the state of Georgia.
What's
presently.
the license fee?
The license fee for a master license for a Class B, it's $5,000,
Okay.
and you pay $125 per machine. The location owner pays $125 per machine. This is all Class Bs.
Okay.
And then there is Class A master license and sticker fees also that are a little less. But it is a system that has worked very, very well and has been copied by a number of other states.
Does the operator's licensee have to pay an application fee?
An application
Explain
fee.
the
No.
master licensees.
No,
How
the
about an
mas-
operator that's store? What do they got to pay for a fee?
They fill out an application. A location owner?
Yeah.
The location
Anything?
owner files an application and pays $125 per machine in that location, and then pays the 10% that you talked about on top of the tax. South Carolina, the situation you described, again, they had no skill games, and they had a part of their law that was purposely poorly drafted to allow cash payout. This is nothing we have ever tried to do in Georgia. We eliminated card games, even though that some card games have some skill, but the decision was made by the industry that we didn't want any card games in the state. We have, to go to Senator Harbison's point, we drafted it in a way that all the veterans groups are covered under the 50% rule. Not only have gift certificates been in the law, but gift cards, up until the point that Senator Mullis talked about with Mike Beatty and being involved, we did have gift cards, and they were used very successfully, and it was the biggest detriment to having cash paid, and it worked. And then, frankly, in a wrong-headed move, you all took that away, and it was a huge mistake. And when merchants in the local towns are able to sell gift cards to the location owners, and the people can decide to either buy something at that store or at a Walmart or a Kmart, it's a tremendous success all the way through. And I think it is a good public policy issue. I think it will address exactly some of the concerns, Senator Cowser, I think that you have raised. I always appreciate Mike Griffin coming and demonizing the industry. I couldn't have a hearing without it. I think at the end of the day, again, it's easy to tell everybody that they want to be God's policeman and how they want them to behave. But I think people who play, I don't care if it's Pac-Man, skee-ball, or a matchup lineup game, I'm sorry, that's not being an evil person, and that's not doing a horrible thing. I may want to go to the symphony more than I want to play an amusement machine, but that doesn't make that evil. And the fraternal organizations, et cetera, can benefit greatly from some of the money that they can generate for this. Again, I think your study, Senator Kauser, that Senate Research puts together, don't factor in at all, no matter what the masters or the location owners get. They have expenses for their business. None of that was factored into, in these statistics. And again, we pay more than any other co-am operation in the entire United States of America. I think that the issue of whether or not we can move forward as a state with this, I think it's something that has been used before, has been successful, was stopped, and the difference between a gift certificate and a gift card is only a matter of technology. And I think that to not move forward on that and to just say, well, we'll do it, but perhaps we want more money for it, seems to be disingenuous. And we would appreciate very much to be able to do this and encourage people to do it right and to do it responsibly.
There are barbarians at the gate out there waiting to meet you.
I
In about 30
understand,
more
and
seconds. I hear 'em
I'm
coming
about
in
to go.
now.
In conclusion, I think that we were instructed very much as an industry to come up with 4 or 5 key points in a bill. I think we have tried to do that with Representative Powell, with Senator Dixon, and to get to an improvement. There always is ways to further improve it, but we are further ahead than most other states, and I'd like to continue the movement upward and not regress back. And if you can see your way to move this forward, I think you will see the elimination of cash payout, operations wanting to have the machines and do it properly, and that's really what we're all about at the end of the day. And just as a final thought, so the chairman of the committee, since you and I are both seem to getting addicted to Wordle, my suggestion to you is that the key word to start with is audio, because it has all those vowels.
I was going to ask Sheila if her streak is still alive.
I'm afraid it is.
Where are you at now?
She shames us.
60-something or 70?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think Sheila has done, she's passed Joe DiMaggio's record of a hitting streak, and I think she's in her 60s. I unfortunately fell down a couple of days ago and have to start her all over again.
That watch was a tough one, wasn't it?
That watch was unfair.
Okay.
We would appreciate
Thank you.
more consideration.
We're
Thank you.
adjourned. We'll be back Tuesday at 3 o'clock for our final meeting.